Welcome back to the channel. I've got a Blu-ray review for a great movie. I got this set on Friday, and that is The Wicker Man from Imprint Films. I wanted to do this review quickly. I spent all weekend plowing through this set to try to give you my thoughts. I'm pretty much Wicker Man'd out, bottom line. Great movie, but when you've watched it like 5 times with the commentaries and it gets a little old. But this set is limited to 2,000 pieces, and it's going to sell out. So I thought I'd best go ahead and review it now, give you guys an opportunity to see what I think about whether to buy it or not, because it's a steep price. I paid $94 for this, so it's expensive for one movie. Well, let's get into it. Having said all that, it's a masterpiece. For those of you that lived under a rock and haven't seen this movie, what are you doing with your life? Go watch this movie. It is the granddaddy of folk horror films, and it's certainly one of the best British horror films ever made. A classic in every right. Well, I guess I'll just briefly tell you the story in case you haven't seen it. Edward Woodward plays a very Christian, hardcore religious cop, and he is sent to an island off of Scotland to look for a missing child, Rowan. Her name is Rowan, and he runs into. Once he gets there, he quickly realizes he's dealing with an entire community of pagans, and things just get more and more immersive as far as the bizarreness of this little island and their lifestyle. They don't have any. They have trouble growing fruits and vegetables, and so they do a lot of pagan rites. They've got the maypole, which is, of course, the phallic symbol, and dancing women, but naked women dancing on fire or dancing over fire, that type of thing. It's got an interesting and bizarre, really, frankly, a bizarre cast of stars in this. I mean, you wouldn't have naturally thought of Ed Woodward, Chris Lee, Ingrid Pitt. I mean, yeah, you can put Chris Lee and Ingrid Pitt together because they were Hammer regulars. But then you got Britt Eklund, a Swedish actress. And one of the things that I learned about in this film, and while listening to the commentaries, is that the famous scene of Britt Eklund dancing naked and trying to lure the Woodward into her room. It wasn't her. It was a body double, some stripper named Candy that they found in London. That they basically thought her backside looked better than Britt Eklund's, and so they had her doubled. And then they also dubbed Britt Eklund's voice, which I can definitely see that now. But those are a couple of things I didn't know. The ending of this film is unlike any other. It's just a masterpiece of cinematography, beautiful landscapes. I mean, Robin Hardy, this is his directorial debut, and he just knocks it out of the park. It's a damn shame that he didn't do a lot of other things because he was just fantastic as a director. The cinematography, as I said, was great. The landscapes are great. Each character in this is interesting. The introduction, even down to minor roles, relatively minor roles, like Ingrid Pitt plays this nympho librarian, and she does it great. Just a wonderful film. It's shot kind of in a documentary style, which is in its own way kind of alarmingly immersive, But yeah, the ending is just a knockout. And of course, I hope you've seen this movie. Anyway, there may be some spoilers as I go through kind of the special features of this box. All right, so that's kind of it's a 10 out of 10 film for basically. So there's three There's basically 4 discs. One is the CD soundtrack. The music is fantastic in this. Even if you don't like, I'm not a big fan of folk music, but I got to tell you, every song in this film is just I could listen to it over and over and over. And I'm not a big, as I said, I'm not a big fan of this folksy, old English type shit. But I loved it. Great stuff. All right, let's go through the different cuts of this film. And as I go through it, I'm going to talk about the controversies here. So here's the first disc. This has got the theatrical cut and the director's cut. Now, the only difference between, well, the theatrical cut essentially is just as it's defined. It was the original cut of the film that went out on its initial release in Great Britain, and it clocks in at just under 90 minutes, like 87 minutes to be exact. It was cut. We're going to get into the whys and wherefores because there's a lot of obvious controversy about this. But the next cut is the director's cut, which clocks in at 1 hour and 41 minutes, and it's really the longest cut of the film in this set. It contains the entire prologue, which was cut from the film, and it's upon its initial release. The prologue basically sets up who is Edward Woodward. It has a very important scene that I think in the prologue, the film opens up in the director's cut with Edward Woodward attending church, and you can obviously tell, man, he is a very deeply religious Christian. And then there's a scene where he's interacting with some cops just before he goes off in an airplane to the island, Lord Summerisle. That scene gets cut in the final cut. But it's basically a 7-minute prologue. There's some indication that there may be an even lengthier prologue that's missing here, but who knows? The negative was apparently lost and has never been found. The scenes that were different from the theatrical cut in this version definitely have a picture degradation. But the theatrical cut is a beautiful high def transfer, and really all the cuts of the film have a beautiful transfers, with the exception of the inserted scenes that were recovered. Now, one of the disappointing things about this film, let me finish up with the theatrical and the director's cut. The theatrical cut, there's another key scene, and that is with how Christopher Lee is introduced to Edward Woodward. In the theatrical version, he doesn't meet Chris Lee until he actually goes to his mansion to try to request for approval to dig up Rowan Morrison's grave. In the director's cut, there's a whole additional scene with Britt Eklund and Lord Summerisle giving away this young man to Britt Eklund, who's kind of like the island nympho, along with Ingrid Pitt, obviously. And Edward Woodward's kind of watching this go along. And that scene, I think, is extremely important because it gives Chris Lee a chance to communicate to the audience his kind of a little bit of what he's thinking and his background as far as mindset. He's not just a pagan, if you will. There's a method behind the madness, at least from his standpoint. That scene is completely stripped away in the theatrical version. And then finally, there's a much debated scene where Woodward and Chris Lee are talking as they walk through his mansion gardens, and talking about the island apples and how they've struggled to grow the apples. Apparently, that scene was is there's a lengthier version of that somewhere on the original negative, but it's gone. Uh, so that's kind of the meatier. There are some little other cuts, but that's to me the meat of the matter as far as differences in the films. Now, the only other thing on this disc is the audio as a new audio commentary on the theatrical version by Kim Newman and an author named Sam Hagen. Let me tell you, I like Newman, but that commentary is one of the worst. It sucked. Uh, the content was sucked. It's basically Kim Newman just rendering his opinion, trying to be funny, and then Sam laughing at everything he says at a much higher volume than Kim. So I spent the whole time raising the volume to hear what Kim Newman was saying, and then having to lower it real quick because the other guy's like laughing so hard it's blasting through the TV. Terrible. All right, so that's it for the that disc. Next up is the final cut, and this is the cut of the film that I prefer. Beautiful, beautiful transfer. The difference here, this one clocks in at just around 93 minutes, and it keeps all the things the director cut wanted, particularly the key second scene of Britt Eklund. Um, but it removes the cops discussion before Woodward leaves on his plane. It includes the church prologue scene, but it eliminates, and I think rightfully so, Woodward talking to the cops before he leaves. I mean, we get enough background just seeing him at the church to understand what we got here. So I think that, my opinion, it's the final cut or the uh, theatrical cut would be my preference versus the director's cut. The picture quality and sound quality is amazing on this. This is the definitive, in my opinion. The final cut is the definitive Wicker Man release. And this has a great commentary by Vic Pratt and Will Fowler, as well as uh, a documentary, about an hour-long documentary that goes into greater detail about the various cuts of the film, why there was cuts, and what potentially happened to the negatives. And I thought that was fascinating. It was great because it finally brings to the forefront kind of the villains of the story, if you will, the producers, British Lion producers. I think Michael Neely was one of those, and they actually have him on camera. They actually confront him, Michael particularly, about what happened. What do you think happened to this negative? And he was kind of like, even though he kind of blew it off and didn't give us answers, it was great to see him kind of put on the spot. So, yeah, that the documentary on here is fantastic. There's also featurettes on the music of Wicker Man, worshiping the Wicker Man. Another interview with director Robin Hardy, and an interview with Hardy and Christopher Lee. Uh, Restoration featurettes. This is pretty much a loaded release as far. Of course, someone's going to call me while I'm doing this, right? And then final disc. This has the CD soundtrack and the director's cut of the film. No, I'm sorry. This is not. Yeah, this is another version of the director's cut. Now, why you need two cuts of the why you need two of the same thing, I don't know. But this one has an audio commentary track on the director's cut, which is the archival commentary with Chris Lee, Ed Woodward, and Robin Hardy. Great commentary, must listening, but it's been on other releases, so can't really give it too much on that. Um, This also has Wicker Man Q&A music. This has a couple of documentaries that go into kind of the film's influences in folk horror, that type of thing. It's just loaded with shit on there. It also goes into the Willow song, which is of course a uh, the famous song that Britt Eklund dances to naked. You know that thing. Um, just a great release all the way around. And it's probably without the commentary is a good 6 hours of, I would say, a good 6 hours of listening. I got a scratch on here. That's definitely not good. Huh? That's not good at all. That's strange. But yeah, I definitely recommend this release. Um, if nothing else, for that documentary, for an hour long documentary on the director's the final cut. That's cinema gold there. What can I say? It's a steep price, but it's probably well worth it. So I would. I mean, I love the film. It's a masterpiece. So I would definitely recommend picking it up. At any rate, it's only 2,000 copies of this. I picked this up off of Orbit. So, and at last I checked over the weekend, I think they're still there. So you can pick it up if you want to. If you've got the release or have thoughts about the film, that things I didn't cover, leave some comments below. Thanks for watching.